I'm Greg Fossilman Raymer. The rise of internet poker has brought many younger and more aggressive players into the game in recent years. While this influx of new players is great for the longevity of the game, it has also changed the way it's being played, especially before the flop. The biggest change we've seen in recent years is the trend toward playing more big pots before the flop. While this can be great if you happen to be sitting on a big hand like two aces or two kings, this trend can prove expensive if you constantly find yourself in situations where your hand is dominated or you're being forced into a coin flip for your tournament life. So how do you keep yourself from going broke before the flop? First, pick your spots and think about what kind of hand your opponent may be raising or shoving with. Does he have a big pair, a big ace, suited connectors, or some other speculative hand? Once you've put your opponent on a range of hands, you have to determine how your hand will play against his likely holdings. To do this, you need to understand hand rankings and how certain hands are likely to play if all the chips were to go into the pot pre-flop. With that in mind, we've created some basic examples of common pre-flop matchups and how they would play out in an all-in situation. With an overpair versus an underpair, say aces versus kings, the overpair will win about 80% of the time. When one hand is dominating another, say ace-king versus ace-queen, the dominant hand will win about 70% of the time. In a coin flip situation, like a pair versus two overcards, something like a pair of fives versus ace-king, the pair will win a little more than half of the time. The higher the pair in this situation, the higher the percentage of winning, as it becomes less likely the pair will be counterfeited during the flop, turn, and river. In spots where you have two live cards versus two other live cards, something like ace-5 versus king-8, the higher hand will win about 60% of the time. In situations where you have a pair versus an overcard and an undercard, something like jack-jack versus ace-10, the pair will win about 70% of the time. This percentage is also about the same in spots where you have a hand like jack-jack versus ace-jack. When you have a pair versus the same card as the pair plus an undercard, such as a pair of jacks versus a jack and a 9, the pair will win as much as 90% of the time or more. Finally, when you have a pair versus two undercards, something like two queens against 10-8, the pair will probably win about 85% of the time. While it's not completely important that you memorize these rankings, understanding how various hands will do against each of your opponent's likely hands will help you make smarter decisions when you're considering making the big call.